Welcome to the Mischief. I'm Valen, and this is Ender's Cataclysm. Today I'm going to be taking you through just about everything that I can think of in order to try and help you accomplish conquering this mod. So for the next boss, we're going to want to go to the ruined Citadel, which is in the end. As before, in order to find one of these, assuming that you probably have defeated the End Dragon at this point, you can just use the Eye of Void, which is going to be pretty much resilient to any kind of damage. You could lose it in the void, so you're going to want to make sure you do this over a really safe spot, and you're not going to just lose it there. But it's made with some purple blocks and shulker shells, plus Eyes of Ender and some endstone bricks. So you will have to likely have found some shulkers in order to at least make some of these. But once you've explored a bit, perhaps you have yourself an elytra, you're going to want to look for one of these structures here. So the preparation for this battle is going to be a little bit different. You're going to want some, of course, netherite, if possible, the monstrous helm, which is just going to help you in general. Of course, an unbreaking shield is not going to hurt. You're going to want some weapons that are going to suit you as well. So the ruined Citadel is going to be potentially one of, if not the first experiences you're going to have with a little bit more than just an arena. It's actually going to be kind of like a large structure, something you're going to be looking around in. You may find some of these Endermapteras. Best way to say it is that they're bugs. I have a diamond sword just for differences so that I can tell it easier with Bane of Arthropods on it. Makes things a lot simpler for killing these. There is a lot of them, and some of the bosses may spawn these during certain waves. Plus they'll drop void jaws, which can be used with spectral arrows to make void scatter arrows. To show you what that does, simply just by using one of these, it will do kind of like a little scatter effect. Back in our home base area, you can see if I aim at the center here, it may break, and some of the extra bits may end up splashing onto some of the other nearby dummies. It's a little bit easier once you shoot into a crowd. You can see the different kinds of damage that it can potentially do, but that's only if the enemy that you're attacking is vulnerable to any kind of ranged attack, which most of the mobs we're going to be fighting are not. So in this case, your handy-dandy foods are going to be golden apples as usual. You're not going to need any kind of ranged weaponry unless you just want to use it to kill some of those bugs that are running around, but I found a Bane of Arthropods sword is going to do that quite nicely. For the main bosses, sharpness 5. You kind of need it. They're extremely heavily armored, and even your Infernal Forge could be useful if you were using that from the previous battle. You are probably going to want some feather falling and, of course, protection on all of your armor. Unbreaking is going to be even better, and if you have mending to try and save these things from being destroyed completely by bosses, that can help too. So this area is filled with some simple traps. You're going to want to be careful because there's two different kinds of traps more or less in here. This is an example of one of them that has not yet been activated. If you step on it, it has a chance of activating. Now I'm in creative. Once I switch over to survival mode, then of course I will be potentially attacked by the bugs nearby, but it can do some kind of large void crystal shooting up from the ground. Once it's been activated, it doesn't activate again, so you should be safe. Another type of trap block is that it will actually teleport you to a different spot. Now when affected by one of those spikes, you actually get a slowness 4 effect, which can be detrimental, especially if you're fighting a boss. And yes, you will find some of these in a boss arena, and not just in trap blocks either. Once you've explored enough, or you just end up taking a shortcut in through the sides of one of these structures, you can find yourself one of these. This is a mini boss. This is an Ender Golem with 75 hit points and 12 armor. That means 6 of those units. These guys are a little bit tanky and not as easy to take down. Plus, they're very melee oriented, and you can't hurt them with any kind of ranged attacks. They can be poisoned, so if you think you can just run around and avoid being hit by them, that's one way of doing it. But also keep in mind, there are going to be traps in here, and you're most likely going to actually activate those. It's very difficult to keep in mind that this faintly colored block might actually be something you want to avoid while trying not to get smashed by one of these giant fists. As you can see, these guys have similar ground slam attacks, but they also can shoot out some of those different crystals in a wave formation. You're going to want to make sure to hold up your shield as often as possible, doing like a single attack and then a defense, They don't break your shield nearly as much, so it's just a matter of hit, wait, and then if you need to, run away to regenerate your health. But if at any time you mess up the order that this all happens in, you might be in for some trouble. But otherwise, they're pretty straightforward and not too difficult to actually defeat. And the benefit you get is actually really good. And I'm not talking about all of the broken blocks nearby. I'm talking about this, a Void Core. Right-click to summon Void Runes. These are actually the attacks that guy was using in some cases. If I do this, you see it does kind of like this little line effect on the ground, and it will injure and cause slowness to enemies that can be affected by it. This is pretty good, and in fact, it is going to be very important for the next boss fight that you're going to have, which is at the other end of this arena that you're trying to find. As you explore this, you may find different loot. You may also find some shulker shells and so on in here, or shulkers just willing to attack you. So there is plenty to see, but you are ultimately going to want to look for kind of an area like this, because at one side of it, you'll find a way down. And if you didn't have enough with just one Void Core and one of these Ender Golems, well, that's because there's two. So you don't need to worry about it quite so much. If you're worried about your armor getting durability loss at this point, now's a good time to recharge it before you end up pursuing the next mini-boss. There's 2 mini-bosses before you get to the main boss. Now keep in mind, if for some reason you decide to retreat and come back to fight one of these guys, if you notice in the bottom left corner, they will regenerate their health in this downed state. A lot of bosses will have some kind of regenerative feature, so please keep that in mind. But sometimes it's better just to run away so you can still fight another day. Once defeated, you then get a second Void Core. Does that mean that you can use one and then the other while it's on cooldown? No, they all cool down at the same time. But that doesn't mean that it's not useful, because you can use that to upgrade your Infernal Forge and perhaps another weapon or two in the future with the help of a Mechanical Fusion Anvil. But that's for future us, or perhaps you may have already defeated that boss and you can then get that there. Once you've looked around far enough, you should be able to come to yet another way down to a second basement. Coming downstairs, you'll then spawn this, an Ender Guardian. These guys are not to be trifled with. They are extremely difficult to take down. They are in your face most of the time, and it's going to be your job to try and get away from it as often as you possibly can. They have 166 hit points and 20 armor points, which may end up dropping in stage 2 once it gets down to its weakened state, which is usually around its half health mark. Now it has different abilities like a shield break punch. Unlike the previous golems, this guy will take your shield out of commission for a certain time. It can stun you with its punches, it can create vortexes that will pull you in, it can teleport to you and punch, and it can summon Endermeptaria bugs just randomly, just to throw in a little bit of a mix. It's important in this battle to stay at max health, because this guy hits so hard, even with netherite gear, that he can take you down within a matter of seconds to nothing. So you're going to want to, as soon as you see your golden apples above, or your golden health disappear, make sure that you're eating another one as soon as possible, because if you make a single mistake, you may end up dead. He can be poisoned, so if you just want to try and keep him at range, that is also a really good idea or tactic that you can do if you think you can outlive him just by running around, though that can be more challenging than you might think. It is also immune to ranged damage of all types that I can find, except of course like poison and harm potions. In this case, I'm going to take my Bane of Arthropods sword off my hotbar, and I'm just going to use my netherite sword and, more importantly, the Void Core, which is going to make this a lot easier of a battle than otherwise, because if you're close to this guy, his frequency of attacks are just going to be too overwhelming for you to kind of deflect and survive in most cases. Let's get into this, and you can see he's already got a teleport stun effect. So if you get that to happen, make sure to block it and run away. Then, just as soon as you can, use your Void Core to do a little bit of damage. Now, he will do some of the same attacks on you, and he'll start summoning different effects at you. It's best to try and just escape through and around different areas as you can. Now that is a vortex that he will try and teleport you into. It kind of pulls you away. And in that case, I just got stunned. If you do get stunned, it's best to try and defend briefly, just because he's going to do another attack before you're usually able to escape. But then it's just a matter of trying to run and repeat. Try and stay around the edges of this, so that if he does teleport to you, you have a way of actually like escaping, instead of in the middle where you don't have as much range to work with. Though keep in mind the range of your own abilities as well. And at times, of course, he'll shoot out the annoying floaty bullets, which is just going to make it a lot easier for you if you can avoid those with your feather falling ability that hopefully is on your boots. If you do get stuck in one of those vortexes and he's already hitting you, it sometimes might be good just to try and constantly either eat your apples and hold your shield up if possible, or just try to escape at your next convenience. You can do so just by jumping and running at the same time, and he'll sometimes propel you out if you can get between his punch and another one of those vortexes. Thing is, this is a relatively longer fight, and it will be very golden apple intensive with this kind of strategy, but it does work most of the time. And I don't see why you wouldn't want to make things easier for yourself than you might otherwise have to. And of course, at the halfway point, the arena changes and he loses some of his armor. He then becomes a bit more vulnerable, attacks more frequently, learns some new attacks that he'll use quickly on you. And this is when your previous difficulties are magnified. But don't be afraid to take advantage of any kind of moments when he's standing still or slowly approaching you to use your own ability to kind of summon your own traps at him, but hopefully not at the expense of your own health or life. Now, some of the annoying parts of this is that sometimes he might teleport up above on some layers that, well, might not have broken when he ended up breaking the arena. So that can be a bit frustrating, and it could also potentially lead to your death, because then he might teleport to you unexpectedly from a weird angle that might have bugged him out. But otherwise, just keep up with the same strategy and you should be able to accomplish it. And victory is assured at some point. Just be sure that you do your best to try and stay out of trouble. But the rewards for this are actually okay. It's the Gauntlet of Gord. This is a melee weapon. It pretty much is almost as fast as a sword. It does a good amount of damage, but it gives you extra armor and armor toughness and knockback resistance being a weapon. So it doesn't really work that well with a shield though, because when you right click, you'll start doing a charge up attack, and that's where you're actually pulling in nearby creatures. So if I were to spawn in some of these map terras and then I use this ability, I'm then pulling them all towards me, and then of course struggling to try and kill them all. So yeah. But it is really good for just like pulling enemies towards you and then giving them a good old punch. So if you want a more infinite weapon that you can also put sharpness on and gives you a bit more armor that won't break, this is definitely going to be one of your better options. But it does kind of negate the option of using a shield. And having it in your offhand will not give you the armor benefit. You do have to have it in your main primary hand in order for that to happen. So that about sums up everything you need for this boss. So let's move on to another one. That's right, there's more parts to this series, so don't stop here. Feel free to click on here once the video is out on the channel. If you enjoyed this and would like to see more videos, please be sure to give a like, comment, subscribe. Don't be afraid to stop by on Twitch, where we stream regularly. And until next time, I'll see ya.